Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. Today, I am here with a naked life story. I have James. James, welcome. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. So, I've heard, know a little bit about your story, but why don't you just walk us all the way back to the beginning and start there?
Sure. Yes, the first time I had beer was a sip when I was 10. I believe it was Christmas or Thanksgiving, and my uncle gave me a sip of beer. It was disgusting. Um, Never drank anything after that. When I was 16, a sophomore in high school, I went to a Catholic high school. So there were a mix of kids from the surrounding towns. And I had some friends from Worcester, where I live now, and had a great idea to grab some beer. So I think it was five of us. We all chipped in $5-10, and we got a case of Narragansett. So that Friday night, I went to my buddy Joe's house, and we went into the woods, and I drank 6 Narragansetts my first time drinking. Um, I was definitely drunk. My parents were coming to pick me up later that night, and as I was walking to the car, my mom said to my dad, "He's drunk." And, my dad, "No, he's not." Well, I hopped in the car. Sure enough, right, the booze, got sick on the car ride home. The next day, I got up and I didn't have a hangover. I got up, I was grounded, obviously. I had chores to do. And I remember my mom being so mad that I didn't suffer from a hangover. Didn't touch alcohol till I was about 19, 20 after that. Substituted alcohol with marijuana. Alcohol for me, I grew up in a small town. I didn't know anyone who was 21 or who could buy. I knew kids who could get marijuana. So I did that till I was 19. So when I was 19, I went to a technical school. I do heating and air conditioning for a living. And there were no Voc schools here like we have now. So there was one out in the suburbs of Chicago. So I moved out there for 13 months. Now the school drug tested. So I stopped marijuana because I didn't want to get kicked out. I was paying for it. But I had roommates that were 21. So drinking evolved from that. And I came home with quite a drinking issue. I mean, I drank all the time. I was 21 at the time, 21, 22 at the time. When I moved back to Massachusetts, I, lived with my parents, and it just, I was hiding alcohol. My mom, she's tough. She would go through my room, find my empty beer cans. I had an intervention with my therapist, my parents, and one of my cousins who was concerned when I was 22. And that didn't do anything. So I drank. I hid my drinking a lot. I rarely went out to the bars. I wasn't a bar fly. I didn't have a ton of friends. Got it?
Got
All
it.
right. All right. I moved out. My wife, or my fiance at the time, we bought a house in 2005, and we moved out then. And I really can't remember. I mean, she is the one reason, like, my drinking was controlled. I feel if she wasn't in my life, it would have been a complete 180, and I would have been worse off. She would, "Oh, you drink again?" And I didn't want to hear it. So I didn't drink as much as I would have liked to, or, as often as I like to. In 2007, we broke up for 3 months, and we got back together. She moved back into the house. And it wasn't because of drinking. I kind of I did. I felt like I dragged her with me. So she started to drink more. And I come to find out, I stopped in February of this year. Come to find out, she drank so she could tolerate me. And I didn't know this for years. And I think she became dependent because she wasn't happy with herself and things in her life as well. Um, and it just continued. And I did do AA when I was 30, and that was only like 4 months. And I didn't have plans of quitting. I think I did it to please people. I didn't do it for myself, quit for myself. So I continued, but at that point I became even more of a closet drinker, just at home. Um, the amount of alcohol, from hiding it to, our recycle bin, we were embarrassed towards the end with the amount of wine bottles, beer cans, and it's like, no, what are the recycle guys think about this household when there's no parties being held? It's just her and I. So fast forward to the past couple years, it definitely became more frequent. 2 days turned into 3, 3 into 4. So there were some weeks where I drink 7 days a week. I always tried to say, well, I'm not going to drink on Monday, but Monday would come around, oh, well, it's Monday night football, or it's Thirsty Thursday. There was always some excuse to drink. Oh, yeah, so it was just the two of us, and, the recycle bins were chock full of empty beer cans and wine bottles. Now, she expressed concern that she didn't want to drink anymore, but I always wanted to. And, like I said, I kept dragging her down this road where she didn't want to because she physically didn't feel well. I think it was starting to affect her physically, where for me it wasn't. I mean, I can count. I drank since I was 21. I'm now 41. I can count on one hand how many times I've been hungover, where it's just crippled me the next day. So I didn't feel anything physically. And we go a couple days and it'd be all right. And, it was always a justification. I had a bad day at work. I would always fish. I'd send her a text, like, wine, ? And hopefully she'd say yes. And when she didn't, I felt kind of aggravated. Like I wanted to drink that night. And she didn't. So I got irritable or restless when she would say no. And last summer was, I think, where everything just crested. There were two times where I was drunk. One, I was in the recliner snoring and she couldn't hear the television. And another time I was looking out the window, but I was so drunk I was swaying. And she was afraid that I was going to fall over and hurt myself. And when I pass out in the recliner, she was always concerned. She didn't want to leave me there because she was fearful that I may vomit and choke, overnight. And both times she tried to get me into bed, I threatened to hit her. And I was in a blackout and I don't remember any of those or both of those episodes. I've never, yet had I kept continuing, I'd never been arrested, no DUI. I've never been in a fight. I've never struck anyone out of anger. And here's this one variable in my life that almost, gave me all of that in one instance. So the second time I woke up to a card, I was going to work and I woke up to an index card. She said, "You almost hit me last night. You're a mess. I'm scared of you. You need help." And I responded, because she goes to work after I do. I said, "I am a mess. You deserve better." And she wrote before she went to work. So when I came home from work, she wrote, just let me know what you want to do, because if I need to leave, I'm going to leave. Uh, so that was this time last year. Every year I take this week off. I have this week off from work, and I roll it into Labor Day. So I stopped last September 2nd, I think Labor Day was, and I went till mid-October. Yeah, I didn't get help. I didn't read anything. I didn't listen to podcasts. I didn't do AA. Um, in mid-October, I had that chirping one night, and until February 1st, her brother was going in for a day surgery for hernia. He lives out in Waltham, out by Boston. And I took Thursday, Friday off. No, I went up. Actually, I saw my therapist Thursday night. I hadn't drank 2 weeks prior to that. I saw my therapist Thursday. And I knew sitting in that meeting with her, I was going to buy alcohol on my way out to my brother-in-law's house. I hadn't told him I stopped drinking, so there was no accountability there. So he had no idea. So I drank when I got up there. Friday was his procedure for the hernia, and Thursday night I got drunk, drove him to the hospital. The procedure was like 4 hours, so I left. He only lives 15 minutes from the hospital. I drank four craft beers, about 7-8% alcohol. Then I drove to go pick him up. He couldn't drive, so I had a good buzz on, and I remember just like the doctor came in. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know they know I've been drinking, because I'll have one beer and it just comes out of my pores. Like, I can't hide the fact when I drink alcohol. Got him home Friday, went and picked up his medication, woke up Sunday. This was one of the hangovers I had. Just pasted to his couch and just felt terrible. And for me, that was it. Remember driving home, and I was like, oh my gosh, if they pull me over, luckily, I drove right by him. I was doing the speed limit. And so Super Bowl Sunday of this year was my first sober day, and I've been sober since.
And then, so the first time you didn't do anything, you didn't read any books, you didn't do any podcasts, and you've been to AA years ago. But then the second time, what changed? What was different?
I knew I couldn't do it by myself. Just, I feel I can't do it alone. I need the information. I like AA. I like the stories, the podcasts, the communities. I like hearing the good stories, and I like hearing the bad stories. I was tired. I was tired of the depression. I never felt worthy. I feel like a kid at heart, but I knew my time was coming where everything would catch up to me physically. I'm not 21 anymore, but I could drink 21-year-old kids under the table, no problem. Tired of making, the wife depressed, and just the somber cloud that seemed to envelop our house was enough.
That's really great. So, how have things been with your wife?
Now,
Yeah.
it's a complete 180. I mean, she has a light aura. She's bubbly now. I mean, she does worry from time to time, but this time last year on my vacation, I was a mess. She was always worried what she was going to come home to, and more times than not, it was me drunk out of my mind. This year, about Monday, she sent me a text mid-afternoon, and she said, I just realized that I hadn't thought about you all day or worried about you all day. And for me, that was huge. I mean, as the time goes on, she's starting to trust more.
not worry, not become anxious. Anxiety was huge when I was drinking for her. And when I read that text, I was elated. Means that I'm doing something right. And that because she doesn't need that extra worry or anxiety. But
That's awesome.
the whole aura around the house is just great. I mean, we've actually, I want to say grown up, because when we were drinking, I think we had Peter Pan syndrome. We don't have any kids. So I think we wanted to stay young forever. So we didn't really tackle things in our relationship that should have been, things that bother us, things that annoy us about each other, because we'd have alcohol to kind of squash it down. And the past couple of weeks there have been a few heated, not heated, but intense discussions about things like that. And had I been drinking, I would have been defensive. I would have been nasty. But I sat there and I listened to her, and then I told what bothered me and my view of what the issue was, and we acted like two adults. And it's like we're in an adult relationship now, 22 years later.
And that's so cool.
It's great. I mean, I'm proud of myself. What I've been able to achieve over the 6.5 months. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool.
yeah.
What a cool story. I always ask, if you were going to tell the James of a few years ago, the one that was like really didn't want to stop, when, angry when your wife would text, no, we're not drinking tonight, or, not tonight. If you were going to tell him sort of what life is like now, what would you go back and say to him?
Ooh, that, it's great. Seeing it happen, it's always, I wish I had done this years ago, but I don't feel like I had any real responsibilities, because I got up for work every day and I went to work every day, even if I drank, the night before. So it really, for me, it's really great. I definitely wouldn't have told the old James, start now. Looking back at AA when I was 30, 31, I wish I did, continue it. But things wouldn't have unfolded for me in my life that, made me realize, how, because I don't know. The whole thing about almost getting hurt was the pinnacle of everything. Being a home drinker, I never worried about anything because I never drove anywhere. This thing would be like falling down the stairs. That happened, but I wish I did. 10 years ago, kind of stick with it. But it definitely, it gets better. It has gotten better. You have to put in the work, and it is difficult. But
yeah, that story of it's very common. Like, you're really not alone in that. Like, I've talked to quite a few men who completely nice, like no intention, no malintention, no, like, never going to be the person that hits their wife, and then drunk, threatening, and stuff like that. Just something else takes over. And it's so interesting, because it's like, where does that come from? And I even felt it in myself in my drinking, where the amount of anger you'd have over something. Like, I can really relate to times when my husband didn't want to drink. I would be like, okay, like, I'm frustrated for the night. Or if he'd suggest we took a night off, I'd probably grump about it until basically he'd say, okay, fine, we'll just, whatever, whatever you want to do, because this is no fun. And everybody says, well, it just loosens you up. It just makes you more of who you really are. And I have found since I stopped drinking, like that is not true. Like
No.
that it unleashes something in you that's like from that we've evolved past. It almost makes us go backwards in our sort of evolution to points in time where we're not the humans that we are now. And it doesn't make us more of who we want to be. And somebody says, well, it just makes you actually feel the feelings you really would feel anyways. You're just suppressing. And that's not true either. Actually, it just suppresses feelings that you would have been feeling, and that you need to feel. Those conversations, I think, with your wife that you're having now are just so beautiful, because it's there that you get closer. Like every time you are vulnerable and open up and have a discussion and aren't defensive, you come out of it. It might not be fun, but you come out of it so much more close and together. And alcohol prevents the true things about us as humans, And so anyway, I just wanted to tell you that story, I've heard it lots of times. It's very much not unique to you.
Yep. I agree. You feel like you're unique, but the more stories you hear, the more you read, you're not alone. And that definitely helps. I could have done something terrible, but it didn't happen. So take it from there. It didn't happen, prevent it from ever happening again. And just don't drink. She knows me the best, but I don't ever remember being angry with friends or buddies or anything like that. It's just with her. Remember anyone ever telling me you almost starting to hit this guy, or you acted like this in the bar. I always thought I was a happy-go-lucky drunk, very outgoing and funny when I drank. But with her, it was a different beast, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just, I've heard the story from women too, where they have gotten violent with their spouse or whatever when they're drunk. So, and that happens a lot too. It's just like it brings out something in us that I don't think is true to us. But I think, obviously that's not, there's certain situations that would be abusive with or without alcohol. That's not what we're talking about here. But so it's not necessarily like an excuse, but it also is just something that we should realize that, like, we're inviting something else into our body. There's I don't know how much I buy into this, but there's a lot of articles and research about the fact that alcohol is called spirits for a reason, and it's kind of inviting these malignant spirits in and stuff like that. And I know that goes kind of down this woo-woo thing, but I've definitely been sent quite a few articles where people talk about the spiritual aspect of alcohol that brings something else, something nasty into the room, which is just an interesting food for thought, I guess.
It is, because it does create a lot of damage, and can, it's, it makes people into something they don't think they aren't necessarily. That is interesting, though. Yeah,
Well, this has been just awesome, James. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. It's powerful, and your vulnerability, your honesty, it's just really powerful. I think it will touch a lot of people.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your vacation, and thanks for taking time out with me. Okay. Have a great day. This has been Annie Grace with This Naked Mind podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can learn more at thisnakedmind.com. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, as it really helps us spread the word.